Now, let's talk about the, again, thawing in relations and, again, the good decision, which is that these tariffs are going to come off barley. Here's Penny Wong taking a victory lap.
The reason we are going down this path is because the Australian government wants to see these impediments, these tariffs lifted as soon as possible. If this is successful, this is a template for the resolution for wine that we would be advocating to the Chinese government.
So, Caroline, what I'm fascinated here is that, again, of all the things we can criticise this government about, you can't really heap too much into them about China. They've been solid eventually on TikTok, solid eventually on AUKUS, solid eventually on pulling out those security cameras, which should have gone a long time ago. So the only difference between this government asking for the tariffs to be removed and the last government is the fact that the government changed and Beijing has sent a message to everyone in Canberra, screw with us and we'll move 1.2 million votes against you.
Yeah, look, I think it has more to do. I think we're giving the government too much credit for this anyway, because this is part of China's new policy to act a little bit more cuddly and less
wolf,
threatening.
A little more koala,
Exactly, a little bit more koala. So I don't know. I think it's good timing. And for them, like, let's look at this critically. They were facing a judgment from the WTO about this, and then they could have delayed and they could have said, okay, it'll be another year. Who knows what's going to come out of this 3 or 4 month review? So I'm hesitant when it comes to anything with China. They can change their mind in a minute. Next week it could be something else. I think it's more a case of good timing.
And don't forget, at the World Trade Organization, China is a developing country. You know, like all those developing countries in Africa that have a space station. Nicholas, again, I give credit to this government for not giving in to China in the fashion that many of us were afraid of before the election. So isn't the reality here that China, well, achieved what it wanted to, which was to remind the Australian political world, push us too far and we'll tell people to vote against you?
So, look, I laughed out loud when I heard that in your editorial, Paul. I'm sorry to say, like, you know, the idea that the Chinese government is trying to, I don't know, deliberately manipulate how Chinese people in Australia will vote, or more to the point that they would respond to that is outrageous. Like, Australians living in this country of Chinese cultural background will vote the way they see fit based on, you know, their interests, the interests of their country, Australia, and their family interests. You know, they're not taking direction from China. I mean, the fact is that
my
Australia
suggestion is what's
China
coming from Beijing, not what people are doing. You know that. And here, Labor is in this lovely sweet spot now where they have become the political beneficiaries of 1.2 million people who, as I pointed out multiple times before, voted Liberal, and then voted Labor. Geez, what changed?
Well, I mean, the reason why these tariffs are coming off now is because it's in the interests of both countries for them to be lifted. The Chinese were angry because they felt that the Morrison government used to keep deliberately poking them in the eye, and so we got ourselves into, you know, a trade war.
Anyone asks
and
a question.
At some stage, you know, Chinese people do want to enjoy lobsters at a good price, great Aussie barley. Of course, they need our
just as long as you don't talk about a global
students love
pandemic.
coming here to study, and so at some point it's in the Chinese interest to go, okay, let's move on. And of course,
don't mention the virus war. Is that the thing now?
We move on. I mean, Australia and China, the last
Wuhan.
30 years, have enjoyed one of the greatest economic runs in human history, and we've both become prosperous together. And I think it's in both countries' interest to see that continue.
I always love the logic of the left here, Hollie, which is we should lead the world in climate change, but we should just sit back when it comes to China.
Well, I mean, it's what China wants, I think, more than anything. When we look at what they need for their own economy, what they need when it comes to our coal, when it comes to our iron ore, all of these things, I think, to read anything more into it, that it's in China's interest to behave this way, absolutely. And I think you're spot on. If anyone dare raise the question around the pandemic again and pointed the finger at Wuhan, I think that frostiness might resettle very quickly.
Dare mention those domestic flights that were stopped, but the international ones that kept going. I mean, nothing to see here. It's only a few million people that are dead quick. We've all moved on from that, haven't we? We're all eating we're al fresco dining now.
And I'm sorry,
the Grand Prix's on again.
The idea that it's laugh out loud funny that China would want to have anything to do with our own elections or political powers. I mean, wasn't it New South Wales Labor that was taking bags of cash from
the
Chinese
Audi
donors?
bags.
Like, I think they do want a little bit of say over what what happens here.
Well, all I say is look at the reporting, particularly of the Channel 9 newspapers, in and around the politicisation of the localised Chinese media, which is part of the information that people are getting in this country.
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
I guess it's a bit different for Nick, though, as well, because they do have Dan, who has such a good relationship with China, and Belt and Roads is all the way in Victoria.
Well, it's a partnership. It's a partnership. It's all about friendship.